I'm a Michael Jordan fan. I don't know if any of you are Michael Jordan fans or not, but I'm a Michael Jordan fan. And by any accounts, he was one of the most successful basketball players of all time. He was a 6-time NBA champion. And each team, finals team that he won, he was the MVP for the finals of that championship. He was a 14-time All-Star, a 5-time league MVP, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. Through his salary and endorsements and investments, he's now worth an estimated $1 billion. The only athlete who can claim that as of today. But since 2006, he's been the owner and head of basketball operations for the Charlotte franchise, was the Bobcats and now the Hornets. And he's had a much more difficult time ensuring that type of success, if you've watched that. I saw an interview with him recently asking him about that, and he said the following. He said, I'm always dreaming about that 7th ring. Always dreaming about 7th ring. He said to get that would be much more gratifying than the other 6. All the other 6 that I've won, because I'm impacting it from a whole different angle. Today, I'm impacting the game from a different perspective. It's not as much fun, and it's a lot harder. Now, as soon as that interview was over on video, they went to the ESPN sports desk thing, and the 2 guys were bantering about the interview. And the one guy said to the other, why can't Jordan just be satisfied? He's like a bazillionaire. Why can't he just stop? That's a great question. Why can't Michael Jordan stop? Now, while Michael Jordan may be an extreme example, I think it's a great question for all of us. Why can't we stop? Why can't we be satisfied? Why do we seem so driven? Madonna is the best-selling female artist of all time. She's 4th all-time artist behind the Beatles, Elvis, and Michael Jackson, with over 300 million records sold. But 4th, or the top female artist of all time. In 2008, Billboard magazine created their 50th anniversary Hot 100 list of the top 100 artists of that period, and she was ranked number 2 by Billboard, behind only the Beatles. She's a first ballot member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She's had 156 number 1 singles, most artists of any artist in history. She's won 7 Grammys, 2 Golden Globes, 20 MTV Video Music Awards, most of all time, and she also is currently worth $1 billion. But I saw an interview with her also recently, asking her about her success, and she says the following. She says, I have an iron will, and all of my will has always been to conquer some horrible feeling of inadequacy. It's always pushing. Because even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody, and my struggle has never ended, and it probably never will. With all of her success, why does she still feel so inadequate? Why does she still feel like she has something to prove? With all the things you and I have been through, it's a valid question for us. Why do we still feel so inadequate? Why do you in your life now feel like you have something yet to prove? I believe that many of us struggle to contain ourselves because we have an idol in our lives. It's not an idol built with human hands that people worship. It's an idol of our hearts. It's the idol of success. And the problem with this idol, like any other idol, is that it can never be satisfied. You can never, it always promises but never delivers. Even if you become as successful as Michael Jordan or Madonna, you will never be enough. It will always promise fulfillment around the next corner, the next promotion, the next accomplishment, but it will never satisfy. God gives us a very different look, and it's a look I want us to consider this morning. Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16 says this. It says, this is what the Lord says. Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in that. God's saying that there's crossroads in life. When you get to those moments, you have to consider, is there something deeper, something richer and truer that I can grab a hold of? God, through Jeremiah, thousands of years ago, was saying that the modern culture of Jeremiah's day, much like ours, if not more so, had kind of gotten off kilter with what God had designed them to be. And they were driven by things that they weren't ever intended. So now they're at a crossroads, and they needed to look beneath and find something truer and richer. And he said, if you do that, you will find rest for your souls. You'll be satisfied. Now that last part of the verse may be familiar to you. Jesus later quoted that passage out of Jeremiah and said that he was the ancient path. He was the truer way. And if you followed him, you would be finding rest for your souls. It's something that he can provide that nothing else can. No other idol will do that. So as we look through the scriptures for these ancient paths, these truer ways, I think we find multiple things that can help us this morning as we consider how to view success. First of all, I think we should view success through the lens of eternity. You may not expect this from me, but I believe that desire for success, it was put there by God. That internal drive that you have to do more and be more and make something of your life, I think God put that in there. But when we forget that this life is not all that there is, this life here on earth, and we begin to lose sight of eternity, it begins to get all of that drive messed up. Look what Isaiah chapter 64 says. Isaiah 64 says, all of the good things we do here are like polluted rags to you. That one day we'll take all of our accomplishments, all of our successes, all of our things that we've done in this life, all of the attaboys and promotions and achievements, we'll stand before God, and when we see how good and powerful and right and awesome He is, all of those things will seem like just garbage. Nothing we do will matter in His comparison. The only thing that will matter is what we did for God in this life and who we brought with us to stand before Him in heaven. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 gives a similar picture. It says, don't store for yourselves treasures here on earth, this is Jesus speaking, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, or thieves break in and steal. Instead, store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Jesus said you gotta take those things and put them ahead where it matters most. See life and life eternity. Now, I need permission to do this. Can I tell you like a cheesy preacher joke? I try to avoid those for obvious reasons. But every now and then it just needs to come out. And you guys have a lot. Some of you have a good experience with how you respond to those. Some of you haven't heard a lot of those, so you may not realize what you're supposed to do. When I tell that joke, it's going to be such a groaner to you. When I tell the joke, when you get done, you've got to kind of nod your head, maybe turn to the side of it, maybe say, oh, it's kind of, I look at each other. That's what you got to do with cheesy preacher jokes, all right? So, are you ready? Okay, so the story is that this old man, and he was very successful in life, had grown this business, had a lot of money, and he loved to collect gold bars. So he had this whole big collection of gold bars to amass his riches. And because he's a control freak, his life was coming to an end. He planned out everything. He planned out the funeral, the reception after the funeral. He planned out who to invite. He planned out what to say. He had it all planned out. And he wasn't sure exactly what happened after death. So he said, I want you to, when you put me in the casket, I want you to put some of my gold bars around me. So that when I get to heaven, wherever I'm going, if I can use that, I'll have it with me, kind of as a seed for the next life. So I want you to just do that. So sure enough, he passed away, had the funeral, stood before St. Peter there in heaven, and he had an angel, because he's used to kind of order people around, had an angel roll up with the wheelbarrow of all the gold bars, and he said, I don't know what this is like, I've been through customs before, I don't know if it's made like that, I want to check these in, can I do that? And so St. Peter looks around and sees the gold bars, and he says, so asphalt, do you want to bring asphalt to heaven? Is that what you want to do? Thank you, I appreciate it. That's very sincere. And see, I mean, when we do all this stuff we amass here on earth, when we stand before God, it's going to feel like nothing. It's just a waste of energy and time. All of that accomplishment was for nothing. See, the desire to succeed was woven into us by God, but when we live like this life is all that there is, it becomes an idol, a very alluring idol that will eventually destroy us. We must consistently readjust our sight through the eyes of eternity, to turn our eyes heavenward. Look what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4. He says it very clearly. He says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. He said, when we focus on this life that we see, can feel, taste, touch, all of that, that's just temporary. It's going away. So we need to fix our eyes on what is unseen, on the spiritual realms and on heaven and eternity. And there's a natural gravitational pull, isn't there? To pull your eyes back down to the here and now. Because here is pressing and urgent, and there's bills and requirements and trips and kids, and you've got to constantly work at pushing your eyes towards what matters the most. And when you do that, it changes everything. It'll change the way you see your career. It'll change the way that you handle money. It'll change the way that you parent your kids. It'll change the very way you view success. But I want to warn you, when you begin to do that, when you begin to reorient your eyes differently than what the rest of culture does, you're going to get some pushback on occasion. Because there's going to be times where you've got to choose to go along with culture or you've got to go with God. And it's going to kind of cause some friction. Paul talks about that in the book of Galatians. He says, obviously, I am not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. For if pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. I mean, sometimes you can do both. You can live your life in such a way that everybody has peace and harmony. But then there's these moments where I've got to choose, do I follow after God through His vantage point, or do I follow after culture through its vantage point? And you've got to choose. And when you reorient your life differently, it's going to cause some pushback. I think maybe there's no clearer picture in Spring Hill in this time and place of how this would change things than when we look at the way we parent our children. Now, I don't want to offend anybody, but I do want to be clear for just a minute, because I think we messed up on all this. I don't think I've ever heard a single time somebody come to Keith or Melissa asking them to train their children on godliness. Can you coach my kids like once a week? I mean, I want them to understand this faith and works business, so can we just work through the book of James together? You know, us with my kids together. I'll bring them, well, we'll have them read every night, of course, so they'd be ready for their weekly practice. But then once a week, I want you to come and really pour into them on this issue. You know, like last week, they had to miss their ball game because it was Bible night. Can't miss Bible night. It's really, I mean, it's so upside down from the way that we typically would talk about these things, isn't it? And I don't want to be ugly, but I think we've raised our kids to be successful. But from what vantage point? I mean, it's possible, if we're careful, that we're going to raise up very successful kids who know how to play ball and know how to play an instrument and know how to say a foreign language, and they go to college and walk away from their faith because we didn't make them successful correctly. And man, we'll be remiss if that happens. And you see it happening every day. Nathan Hatch says that the family used to be a safe haven, a counterbalance from the dog-eat-dog world that we all grow up in, but not now. Now it's what David Bruce calls the professionalization of childhood, where the family is just one more means to make our kids successful and busy and driven. I think we just missed the point. So it's not that those things are bad. You don't hear me say that. I think we're out of balance. So I want you to sit down this week as a family, as a couple, as with your kids, however you want to do it, and just say, how much time, energy, effort, focus are we putting into making our kids successful by the world's standards? And how much time, energy, effort, focus, money are we putting into our kids to make them successful by God's standards? Not that one's completely should be wrong, but are they balanced? Or is the ratio what we want it to be? And if it's not, then choose to make some difficult choices to get your kids' lives in balance. I mean, every one of us, I don't know of an exception, or maybe, but I don't know of an exception. People saying, I wish we weren't so busy. And yet we train our kids that that's the only way they know to live. Maybe it's out of balance. I think it's true for us. I mean, how much time do you invest into making yourself successful by world standards? How much money, energy, focus? How much do you spend by God's standards in terms of Bible study, prayer, and community, and evangelism, service? I mean, how much do you spend on this? And is it in balance? Not that one's right or the other's wrong. It's just a sense of balance. You know, biblical parenting is not perfect parenting. It's parenting with eternity in mind. And I think we need to live our life, parent our kids with eternity in mind. That's an ancient path. A second ancient path is the idea of solitude. The ancients would call it practicing solitude. Just to be still before God. Not even praying, not even thinking, just still before God. I saw an interview with a man named Craig, who's a workaholic, self-admitted, a workaholic. And he was very successful in his business, and he was having a lot of achievements and doing a lot of great things, and his family had about had it. Because he was consumed all the time. So when he was at work, he did long hours, and when he was home, he was thinking work, when he was on vacations, he was looking at his phone for emails, he was a man consumed, and his family had enough. And so his wife said to him, you've got to go to a counselor. You've got to figure this out. He was a Christian man, so he went to a Christian counselor, and he said it was just a waste of time, really. Because the whole time I'm there, I'm rolling my eyes like, this is stupid, I don't know what you're telling me, I'm fine. And so he left, not changing anything. And then a few months later, his body began to show signs of breaking down. It's like, you've got to make some changes. And so this time he said, I'm going to go to a counselor because I think that's probably the right decision. And so he goes to this counselor, takes some time off work, goes to a counselor, and he tells the guy his story, here's the schedule, here's the agenda, here's my plan, here's my demands, here's all this stuff. He says, so what do you think I need to do to try to get this right? And the guy says, I want you to take 5 minutes a day. I know you're busy. Take 5 minutes a day. Just be still before God. It's a practice of solitude. He He said, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm paying you $100 an hour to tell me to be quiet for 5 minutes. It is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And so he left there thinking, this is dumb. I'm not doing that. I took time off work and paid $100 for a guy to tell me to be quiet for 5 minutes. That's stupid. So he goes home and he tells his wife how ridiculous this is. And his wife says to him, the same advice that Naaman the leper got in the Old Testament. She said, if he would have asked you to do something crazy, would have you done that? He said, well, yeah, I'd have done that. He said, well, then why won't you do this thing which is very simple? Okay, so he says, I'll try. So he went home and he got quiet for 5 minutes. He said, I didn't pray, I didn't think about my to-do list, I didn't think about what needed to be done, nothing, just sit quietly for 5 minutes. And he said it was the longest 5 minutes of my life. I never just had no idea how long that was going to take. So it's just really disconcerting. But he said it really began to change the way I looked at things, so I began to put it into a habit. Well, I was here that Tuesday. Tuesday I tried to go away and hide around Spring Hill, different places I go and hide, to do sermon prep stuff on Tuesdays. And so I heard about that, and then a little bit later on in the day, I was doing stuff. I was out at the Civil War Walk Park thing. You know what I'm talking about? The big Kedron Road, the big track, whatever you call that. Anyway, I was out there, and I thought, I should try this 5-minute thing. Right in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nature, I should just try this. So I kind of got off by myself. I pulled out my phone and set a 5-minute timer on it. You know, it's so sad how we have to bring phone into it somehow. Anyway, 5-minute timer. So I started it, and I thought, I was out in nature, trees. Couldn't even hardly hear traffic. It's like it's a beautiful day. And so I was real quiet for a second. This is kind of weird. This is stark. It's been a long time. I looked at 30 seconds. Like, oh, gee. So a little longer. I wait and wait. So I started thinking about it. No, don't think about the to-do list. I started thinking about what I need to get done. Oh, no, don't. Start praying. No, pray. Just be quiet before God. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life. It was the weirdest thing. It just really begins to wreck with how you do it. Our life is not geared that way. Look what St. Augustine wrote years ago. He says, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our souls are restless until they find rest in you. Now, if his culture was restless, however many years ago that was, what can he say about us today? We're a restless bunch. So that I can't even take 5 minutes and be quiet without listening to my email beep and trying to figure out what's going on. You'll never find rest until you find it in God. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 9 says, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. And this verse in Hebrews, this word, the Greek word is unique, and so there's a lot of debate on what he's talking about here. But there's a Sabbath rest. You got, for anyone who enters God's rest also enters from their work, rest from their work, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter into that rest. Now that seems counterintuitive, to make every effort to rest, and yet the writer of Hebrews knows that we've got to do that. It's not natural for us to have times of rest and solitude. Psalm chapter 131 says, David writes, but I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. He did that. It's not that it happened automatically or happened after the next deadline or happened after the next event. He chose to calm and quiet himself. He says he's like a weaned child. What's he weaned from? Isn't it true that our world kind of sucks us in and makes us dependent upon all the craziness? You've got to kind of wean yourself from that pace of life. He's chosen to calm and quiet himself, to wean himself from the world. Now, last week I told you that these 4 weeks, last week, this week, and the next 2, I was going to present an idol that I think we worship. Not idols that you see, but idols in our heart. And I wanted you to pull yourself away from those. And when you look at Scripture, when a group worshipped idols, they didn't just sort of veer away from worshiping idols. It was too attractive. It was too addictive. And so they would have to do something dramatic to pull themselves away from an idol. You'd see them pulling down the idols or smashing up the materials or whatever. It was something dramatic. And so in the same way, I want to give you something dramatic for each of the 4 idols to dramatically change the way you see your life. And so last week we talked about money as an idol. How we idolize money. And so the challenge I gave you, I said the only thing I know of that can work against greed, that we often don't see in our own mirror, is generosity. It's the only thing the Bible gives us as an antidote. And because we don't really see how greedy we are, typically, I don't, then you need an objective standard. The objective standard in the Bible is the tithe, the first 10% giving it back to God. And so I know some of you may do that, some of you may not do that. I just want to lay out a blanket challenge for this week only. this past week that you would choose to give 10% of your income, what you made that week, away to God. Some of you have already done that through the well or a missionary or something like that. Some of you may do that this morning. And I know that's scary, but I want to challenge you to do it. It's not about what we want from you, it's what we want for you. To be set free. And so today's challenge for this next week is I want you to take 5 minutes a day and be still before God. To practice solitude. Use the word practice because it doesn't come naturally. You've got to practice at this. Take 5 minutes a day. Not planning your day, not thinking about stuff, not even praying. Just 5 minutes of stillness before God. If you can do it, bonus points, find a place where you can actually see a tree. That's going to be helpful to you. If you can see something of nature, your backyard or something, or go out at night so you can see the stars, or do something. But 5 minutes a day, you can do this to be still before God. Okay? That's going to tear down this idol that we built up. The third ancient path, and then we'll wrap up and close. So I want to challenge you to live in peace. The way the Bible talks about life and the way that we live our life is often very different, and this area of peace is no exception. Paul wrote to the Thessalonians, and he told them to make it their ambition to live a quiet life. When you think about being ambitious, you don't think about being peaceful or quiet. That was the ambition that Paul gave to them. I saw this anonymous quote. It says, "The drive for success is a great servant, but a horrible master." That drive inside of you will serve you well. You'll get a lot done in this life. And as long as you're over it and you're in charge of it, it will be a great servant. But the moment it becomes in charge, the moment it becomes the master, it will become a very alluring idol, and it will lead down to a path of destruction. You've got to be in charge. You've got to be containing that. John Ortberg describes his life, and he describes a situation very similar to what a lot of you experience. He was in a brand new job, in a brand new community. He was very demanding. And on top of that, he said, my family was young. So we were in he quotes this, so we were in the van driving, soccer league, piano lesson, school orientation night years. Some of you know exactly what that feels like. So he said, my life was crazy. I was coming and going. I didn't know which way was up. I was just trying to survive each day until I got to the next and the next and the next. So he said, I knew this wasn't going to end well, so I called a friend of mine, a wiser, older friend, and said, help me out here. I don't know what to do. My life's crazy. So he described what was going on. He described his job, the demands. He described his family, described his pace, all of that. And after a few minutes, the friend on the other side of the phone kind of just caught his breath and said, I want you to do something for me. I said, what's that? He said, I want you to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And Ortberg said, oh, that's good. Write that down. Okay, what else? I got a meeting here in a minute. What else? No. That's it. I want you to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Ortberg thought about that for a while. And he prayed, consider that. He finally decided that was true. He began to go on a journey of eliminating hurry from his life. And afterwards, he concluded this. He said, I have concluded that my life and the well-being of the people I serve depends on following his prescription. For hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. Hurry destroys souls. And I believe that it does. So if you and I are going to live in peace, we've got to eliminate hurry from our lives. Let me give you a challenge. I want you to prove me wrong on this. I want you to look through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read about the life of Jesus, this man who impacted the world. And I want you to find me one example of when he was in a hurry. One example. One example of when he was rushed with the people that he was with so that he could be the next thing that he was scheduled to go to. One example of that. And then I want you to explain to me why your to-do list is more important than his. Sorry. We must eliminate hurry from our life. If we're going to develop souls that are at peace, we've got to eliminate hurry from our life. Psalm chapter 46, verse 10 says to cease striving and know that I'm God. Some translations say be still. The American Standard says cease striving and know that I'm God. I want you to eliminate hurry from your life. You know, this week I was taking some time to pray through and think through this message and really this whole series. And I was thinking through the 4 challenges, the tithing and then the solitude this week, and then the next 2. I won't tell you what those are. You'll have to come back to those. Or get those planned out, ready to go. And I was thinking about those 4 challenges. And I thought, man, if somebody would do those, it'd be better as if you built on them. So like the first week you do the tithing, the second week you do the first and second, third week you do the first, second, third, fourth week you do the first, second, third, and fourth. Just for these 4 weeks. And even if you quit at the end of those 4 weeks, Man, I thought you're going to be so much healthier. Your life's going to be so much fuller and richer, because some of these things are going to be challenging, but they're going to spur you to a better spot. And man, I want that for us. I want you to feel healthy like that. I want you to be free, to be unrolled, to use the phrase we've been talking about, from some of the things that make us crazy. And then multiply that out. What would happen if our church did that? Like if our church as a whole began to take these idols that drive us away from the ways of God, and began to ruthlessly eliminate them from our life, so we had a life that was in peace and perspective and wholeness. It could be something dramatic. It could really change not only our lives, our kids' lives, our futures. I mean, I told First Hour this. If there's ever a week that I think what I'm going to say won't help you, I'll just pray and send you home. I won't waste your time. I mean, I think it's going to help week in, week out. But this is different. I mean, these four, if you'll do them, if you'll latch, they're so tangible. If you'll latch onto these four things, I think they'll not only change your life, but they'll change the course of your kids' life. Even if 4 weeks from now you go back to normal, start the normal life and just go right back, you'll have such a perspective on things from having ripped these idols down out of your life. In just a moment, we're going to have a time of response where they'll sing for us, we'll sing together, and then time of communion and prayer. And I just want you to take during that time and decide, is this something I just want to consider theoretically for somebody else to do, or is this something I want for me? Do I want my life to be different? Do I want that idol to have a place in my heart? And if the answer is no to that, I want you to decide personally, I'm going to rip that down for me. I'm going to do that. For my family, for my home, for my life, I'm going to rip that down. Because until you do that, you're never going to get to that place of health and wholeness. I want to end today. I heard Francis Chan tell about how our life is like a rope. So I put a rope here. I didn't want to trip you as you came in. I know I may have done that for some of you. Sorry about that. But I put a rope in here. I wanted you to see it, so it'd be kind of notable. Like, what in the world is he up to? So anyway, I put this rope in here. And he said our life is like a rope. And you know, our life, the Bible says you will live these how many decades you get, and then your body will cease to be, but your life will continue on forever. And so I ran this rope down the aisle and out the back, and so it looks like it goes on forever and all that stuff. And this is your life. But he said this first part is what matters the most. This first part here, where I put the duct tape is, this represents the amount of time you get here on this body, on this earth. 60, 70, 80, 100 years, whatever amount of time you get here. This is your life here on earth. But then your life goes on forever. And he said when we think of it this way, it changes the way we see everything. Because we put so much of our energy, thought, perspective, time, focus on the duct tape. And it's not about the duct tape. He said we'll say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to work really hard right here, and get a good education here, so that I can really enjoy right here. Which all makes sense if this is all there is, but it doesn't make sense in light of eternity. Some of the decisions we make don't make sense. I'm a Dave Ramsey fan, don't hear this the wrong way. But we say, I'm going to live like no one else, so I can live like no one else. And that all is crazy if this is not the end. I mean, live like no one else, so you can live like no one else, so you can bless people on into eternity. That makes sense. But our life, we live it like it's all about the duct tape, and it's not about the duct tape. God wants more for you.